Good morning, Magic. I'm Gavin Verhey from Wizards of the Coast, and we are back with more on Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. And today, we're going to figure out who we're going to bring in. Let's see, I'm going to roll a little encounter check here. It's a 4. Looks like that's going to be Corey Bowen. Corey, welcome to the show.
Hello, Gavin. Thanks for having me back. I'm very happy and excited to be here.
So glad to have you, Corey. We've had you on a few times now, and you always bring tons of insight. So you worked on Adventures in the Forgotten Realms. What was your role with that set?
Yeah, so I was a set designer on Adventures of the Forgotten Realms. I worked closely with Jules. I was kind of there to help build some fun or whimsy into the sets and bring a kind of perspective from my roles playing on a lot of commander sets, try to add some cards or mechanics that people from that realm might enjoy.
So when you think about the commander perspective of the Forgotten Realms, what are some of the big things that entails?
So while I didn't work on the AFR commander sets, and I was mostly on the main set, there are a few aspects of commander that I thought would be really fun and would align with the D&D main set. Commander is a very high identity format. People like to feel a lot of identity with their decks and identity with their legends, and that's very similar to Dungeons and Dragons, where you play your character and you're role-playing them and you feel identity toward your character. So there's a lot of alignment of maybe getting legends to feel like their archetypes. So you could play a deck that feels like one of the characters, one of the legends in the set.
Well, speaking of role-playing, Corey, this set, Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, has something pretty wild and brand new to black bordered Magic. And that is the advent of dice rolling. What's going on here?
Yes. We are finally rolling dice more often here in Black Border Magic. In Adventures in the Forgotten Realms, we are rolling D20s, which is shorthand for 20-sided dice. Essentially, many cards in the set will have you roll a D20, and there will be a dice table just like you would find on a D&D module or adventure or whatever. In any D&D book, you find tons of dice tables, and you roll a die. You look up your effect on the table, and that effect happens. The higher you roll, mostly the better your effect is going to be. And people are rolling tons of D20 in D&D, so we thought it would be really fun to bring that exciting moments into Magic the Gathering.
And so why now, right? Like, we've seen D20s in unsets before. They've been a staple for a while. We've seen D6 in unsets. Why bring them into Black Border Magic here?
Yeah, so the key to all of it is Dungeons and Dragons. We were sitting there trying to answer the question, how do we make this set feel like Dungeons and Dragons? There were many things that we could bring to Magic from Dungeons and Dragons, but they actually have a very high overlap flavorfully. Rogues are in both Dungeons and Dragons and Magic, for example. When we were looking at potentially things that involve D20s or the 20-sided dice, we found that if you were playing a game of Magic and you rolled 20-sided dice, it doesn't matter what the outcome was, you felt like you were playing Dungeons and Dragons. And that was really the goal of the set, was to combine those two feelings.
So as you were creating and balancing these, like with an individual card, what were the general kind of patterns you went through? Was it like 3 abilities per card with, different results? How does that tend to play out?
Yeah, so there's a lot of kind of theory and philosophy behind how we made the die rolling cards. A lot of this theory came from what we have learned from coin flipping cards of the past. Actually, I know you're a big coin flipping fan as well, Gavin. When I came onto this set, I had just gotten off of Modern Horizons 2. I worked on that for a little bit. And when I was on that set, I was very excited about trying to bring back coin flipping. And you can see there's a few cards in Modern Horizons 2 that flip coins. Those coin flip cards were stuff that I was pushing for because I thought it would be really fun to bring back that kind of all or nothing mechanic. If you notice on most of those coin flip cards in Modern Horizons 2, when you lose the flip, it's not like you get nothing, or the randomness is a little bit standardized over time. Like there's the goblin, when it attacks, you flip 3 coins, and so you lessen the chance of just getting nothing from that effect. At the very least, you have this body. Coin flip cards of the past, what would happen is that, like Stitch in Time, I think about this all the time. You pay 3 mana, you flip a coin, you're either getting an extra turn, or you are spending 3 mana and a whole card on literally nothing. While that risk and reward is very exciting and fun, it doesn't make for a lot of cards, and we wanted to make a good handful of cards. So one of the things we looked at was having in your dice rolling, never really making you lose your whole action economy to this roll. If you roll a 1, your effect is still going to happen. If your card is meant to gain life, it's going to gain life. And the effect of your roll shouldn't really change what you are going to do next this turn. If I roll a die to do something, and I had plans to attack that turn, the outcome of that roll shouldn't, most of the time, shouldn't majorly affect whether or not I was going to attack with certain creatures. We also had a lot of philosophy in targeting with dice rolling. We didn't want to make a burn spell, for example, that would upgrade in damage. Because if I targeted, if there was a die roll card that shocked, but it upgraded to 4 damage, and I targeted something with 3 toughness or 4 toughness, and I low rolled and it just shocked it and it did almost nothing, that would feel bad. We didn't want to leave the variance to screw you over in a sense. We wanted to make sure that the cards just upgraded in a way that didn't change your whole turn.
So you kind of set some principles, right? So it sounds like it's never bad to roll high. You don't have targeted effects that will upgrade to do something that, might make it bad to cast the effect in the first place. And you don't have cards that are solely just roll high or the card does nothing. Is that kind of capturing it well?
Yeah, totally. And sure, there's a few cards in this set for people who do really like high risk and high reward, like the treasure chest card. When you roll a 1, I believe you just lose 3 life. You can low roll in that card if you want to go play those cards at low roll, but for the most part, the cards are going to do what they're going to do. They're just going to do it better or worse. And many cards in this set, we had a lot of fun finding little different places to put in sweet, awesome effects when you roll a 20. And that was a really fun part about rolling die in D&D is obviously rolling that natural 20.
Right, because a critical roll is this huge thing when you hit a 20, right? So on a lot of the cards in this set, that's reflected with the D20 roll.
Yeah, totally. There's many times in Dungeons and Dragons where you just roll a 20 and get away with something that you totally wouldn't have had the ability to do otherwise.
So you clearly spent a lot of time trying to make these cards work. Who are they for? What is the target audience for these?
Yeah, well, first of all, they're for people who like rolling dice, people who love that risk and reward that I mentioned earlier, people who like high variance gameplay, want something to happen but don't quite know what's going to happen, people who want to have epic moments when they hit that 20. They put a bunch of dice rolling cards in their deck just so that they can fish for those games, or sometimes they just roll a 20 and it completely changes the tide of the game. In this set, we thought it'd be cool to focus in the die rolling colors a little bit on blue and red. We thought that players who liked blue-red very often liked coin flips. Sometimes they often, aligned with the Is It Guild from Ravnica, which has this very chaotic nature. And dice rolling has this kind of chaotic vibe to it. And so we're kind of serving those players who enjoy variance, chaotic vibes, just like having fun and want to see what happens. And really, that's who I am, so I'm really enjoying the die.
Right, I mean, you made Usuri, I made Okwan and Zender Split. These are cards that are near and dear to our hearts. And a lot of these die rolling cards fit in a similar favor, but what I do like about them so much, Corey, like you said, is it's not all or nothing, right? Even if you don't roll a 20 on your card, you still usually get a pretty sweet effect. So what I'm really picking up from what you're saying about the kind of players that will enjoy this is in my Commander games, it's a really good fit, right? Those games will have high octane action, you're rolling dice, you never know what's gonna happen. It kind of feels cascadey in a sense.
Yeah, fans of Cascade and coin flips and other variant mechanics are going to be at home to play with these die rolling cards. And if you're a fan of Commander and die rolling, definitely stay tuned for the Commander spoilers.
These cards are a blast to play with. And in design, they were really targeted and aimed at Commander and other social formats. And that's where I expect them to show up the most. They are so much fun. So speaking of Commander, those previews are happening a little bit later on, but that doesn't mean there couldn't be any main set cards that also deal with dice rolling. Are there any legends in the main set that have to do with dice rolling, Corey?
Yes, there is, Gavin. Here is Delina, Wild Mage. Delina is a red legendary creature elf shaman. You cast her for 3 and a red. Whenever Delina attacks, you're going to choose a creature you control and roll a d20. On a 1 through 14, you get to create a tap and tapping copy of that creature, except it's not legendary and it exiles at the end of combat, like a heat shimmer. But on a 15 through 20, you're going to create one of the tokens and then roll again. That token still is fleeting, but you have the chance for Delina to just continue making tokens. Who knows how many tokens of that creature she's going to create tapped and attacking It is just a ton of fun to make an insane amount of creatures potentially. Delina is really fun. She's actually a wild magic sorcerer, which is a really great subclass to play in Dungeons and Dragons. Much like Delina here, wild magic sorcerers just create very variable effects. They're always causing mischief and chaos. And Delina herself is actually from the Heroes of Baldur's Gate comics. I love Baldur's Gate, so I'm really excited to try out Delina in the wild.
Yeah, this card's so fun because, once again, whenever you attack with it, you'll always get a good effect, right? You're going to be copying in another creature. That's great on its own. But man, those times where you start going off with this card, we make 2-3 copies, that's a total rush, right? And I can imagine, especially in Commander, you could get up to some pretty wonky shenanigans.
Oh yeah, it's gonna be wild just seeing what Delina can do. And, I might just run some sort of like mono red ETBs deck or something in Commander where you're just like, yeah, I'll fill those ETBs and I'll get some amount of them on my combat step. I'm not quite sure which.
Yeah, you could play like some ETB rummage cards and some ETB damage cards and eventually end up with this kind of engine that whenever you attack, you're gonna get stuff. You're not sure exactly how many of that stuff, but you're gonna get some pretty sweet stuff. And I'm sure there'll be some fun stories that are caused by this card. Anything else you want to tell us today about dice rolling, Corey? Any stories from development or a card in particular that you really liked?
Well, I mean, we had just a lot of fun rolling D20s, rolling those 20s. This mechanic is wild. This mechanic is fun. I had a lot of fun. We worked super hard on them, and I'm really happy or really excited to see you all play with them out in the wild. So I'll see you out in the Forgotten Realms, everyone.
Well, thank you so much, Corey, for taking the time to come on the show today. What do you all think about dice rolling? Let me know in the comments down below. I'll talk with you again tomorrow, but in the meantime, you have a lot of fun rolling dice. You got this.
Yeah, so dungeons are a new type of card, and they don't go in your deck. You don't draw them. They exist sort of closer to tokens outside the game for you to use when other cards require them. And there are cards in the set that'll tell you to venture into the dungeon, which will have you pick one of the 3 dungeons.